Good afternoon. Welcome to the Monday, December 1st, 2008 informational meeting of the Sioux Falls City Council. I'll now call this meeting to order, and the first report we will have is a City Council staff report with some updates from Deborah A. Owen, City Clerk.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Sioux Falls City Council. A couple of things to let you know. If you'll notice on your agenda, item number 12, that's a conditional use permit allowing motor vehicle display and sales. And actually, there will be a request from planning to have that go back to the Planning Commission tonight. So that will be Mike Cooper bringing that, and there's been some additional information there for them to review. And also, there's a couple of handouts at your desk. One is for item number 11, one is for item 29. They both relate to alcohol sales, in particular some of the stings that have been conducted over the years for some of those licensed renewals. If you'll notice, the highlighted portions that are in this turquoise color indicate that there was a successful sting against them. And there is some repeat offenders. I know that's a very important thing for council when you look to renew those licenses. So that's provided for you to take a look at that. That's, again, for items number 11, which is on the consent agenda, and item number 29. And also, if you'll notice, you have a Fiscal Committee meeting agenda, and on the flip side, you'll have a Land Use Committee agenda. We're trying, in an effort to go green, to give you that information on one sheet, and so please remember to take those to your committee meetings. And also, the Breakfast Club, which meets, of course, in December, will also be taken over by the City Council in 2009. So for those of you who have ideas for us to begin to schedule presentations for the January meeting, please let us know. We'll move forward on that. We change that out every 3 years. In 2006, the council was in charge of that agenda, and your staff administers that for you. But looking forward to having ideas from you as to who would speak on behalf of council members to the group of, and the group consists, for those who are listening, the group consists of elected officials from both the school districts who reside near or in Sioux Falls, and also the city council, the county commissioners, and whomever else who would like to attend. I believe that's everything. Thank you.
Questions of Deborah. Councilor Knudsen.
Not a question, but just a, well, I guess question, comment regarding Breakfast Club is, you may all know this by now, but, usually we just meet quarterly, but actually I suggested at our last meeting when we were talking about legislative issues, I just asked if we were maybe going to meet with legislators, at least the ones we could gather up that early that morning in December like we had the last few years, and so the decision has been made to have Breakfast Club an extra time than was already scheduled. So that's scheduled for December 17th. I believe that's the right date. And I'm sure we won't get all the legislators there, but even if we get some there, we're going to try to present a somewhat of a united front between county, city, and school district. And we realize that we all have different priorities and concerns and so forth. And then regarding next year, 2009, I was just wondering, because we didn't have any discussion about this at Breakfast Club. I know that's usually how we do it, the school, the county, the city. But I remember it was about a year and a half ago that the Lincoln County Commission expressed some interest in taking its turn on a whole year of doing Breakfast Club. And I was just wondering if, I haven't heard any new discussions by them about it, but I just thought we might, just out of courtesy, might want to check with them to see if they want to get in the loop of hosting, because a couple of them were real interested in this a little while ago. So I just bring that to your attention.
Councilor Costello.
Deborah, I'm trying to think back when we hosted before, but I thought it was the administration that took the lead on hosting it. Am I
No,
correct?
the council.
Anybody else? Thank you, Deborah. Thank you for that. Next, seeing nobody from Mayor Munson's office, number 4 is the Audit Committee. Councilor Costello.
We have in our midst a couple of the members of the Audit Committee and our new member, and Brad Witzel is going to come up and introduce the latest addition. Brad is the chair of the Audit Committee.
As Pat said, I am Brad Witzel. I'm chairperson of the Internal Audit Committee here for the City of Sioux Falls. And as some of you are aware, on our committee, there are 3 at-large people on that committee. We're CPAs, the 3 that we currently have now. And then there's 2 city council people also. on the committee with us. Those three of us that are at large, our terms are staggered so that one of us rotates off each year. This year, Paul Ryder rotated off and decided not to have another term with us, so we were left with a vacancy. And so the committee's been working on filling that vacancy, and I'm very glad to tell the City Council I think we found somebody who's very capable. I would ask Joe Marsh to stand, and I'll just read you a little bit about Joe. Tonight, I believe, towards the very end of your agenda, you'll see, is it a resolution asking you to approve Joe Marsh to be on the Internal Audit Committee. So Joe is also a CPA. He currently is a vice president for U.S. Bank here in town, just works down the street on 8th Street there. He's been at that position from 1994 till now. Prior to that, he's with Henry Skolton and Company, an accounting firm here in town. He's with them for about a year and a half. He graduated from USD in 1993 with a major in accounting. And like I say, he is a certified public accountant. So just wanted to make sure tonight, when you're talking about Joe Marsh, you could put a face with a name. So thank you.
Thank you for that. Councilor Knudsen.
A question for Councilor Costello is, first of all, thank you for being with us today, and thank you for agreeing to serve on the Audit Committee. I look forward to getting to know you better. I mean, I don't know you at all yet, but just a question for going forward, and I just didn't double-check this, is that, so I just remember when we first established the Audit Committee, city councilors made suggestions to who would go on the Audit Committee. And so I just assumed when there were vacancies that the City Council would be asked to submit names. And again, I'm sure this gentleman is extremely capable, and I'm very thankful that he's willing to serve. But I just didn't know that was how the process is going to work. So am I mistaken, maybe?
I guess I can't really speak to that. I think the Audit Committee took it upon themselves to look through the city and look for candidates, and I can tell you that I don't think we had our doors being run over for people looking to be on this committee, and we thought we came across somebody that we were quite comfortable with and decided to move forward with that.
Well, and again, I thank you for your efforts on that, and it's just a question going forward as far as, precedent and so forth. I was just, that wasn't the process I thought we were following, but it's not a big deal to me.
Yeah, it seems to me that the Audit Committee was going to make recommendations, and that's what we're doing today with the resolution, I thought.
Dee, I don't know if I can speak for the whole committee, but in the future, we would definitely take suggestions from the City Council if you would like that.
Right.
Like I say, we'll take all the help we can get in finding qualified candidates.
Okay, thank you. And again, I'm sure that we have a very capable one here that's willing to serve.
He's very capable.
So thank you.
Yep.
Councilor Staggers.
Yeah, I guess kind of reflecting on what Dee was talking about, the past, I thought on the Audit Committee, the City Council would be able to outvote the other members of the committee, since this is a City Council committee.
You mean as far as in the number of people, like
Yes.
two to three? Well, in my experience, it's always been three individuals from the community and two counselors. I mean, this is a relatively new committee.
But once again, I thought in the past, since this is a City Council committee, we have a situation now where City Council members can be outvoted by non-council members.
And it's always been that way.
Well, that's the reason I'm asking the question. I thought it was different.
Deborah, please.
If I could, the council adopted an ordinance back before I came on board, back in 2005, and it's in the ordinance, and that's under the administration section of the code, where it's outlined how that committee will be set up. Now, I do defer to Dee. I do think that I think the next appointment will be sometime in April of '09, and of course, this is a committee of the council, and so, it runs at your direction, and that's part of the council's function as a whole. But the ordinance that the city council set up, council member Staggers, does state that you would have a minority of council members and a majority of CPAs, and I think the intent was, from council member Bob Jameson, is that you wanted to make sure that that audit function remained independent, and that those audits were not politically driven as much as they were just executed by those who actually are familiar with the function of internal audit. That was my understanding.
Okay.
I have a role in that. I, too, serve kind of as your council operations person, but I, too, step out when it comes to the day-to-day function of the audit and who they're auditing. Actually, on any given day, the administration knows more about that individual audit than I would, in part also because we wanted to make sure that that internal audit function remains real independent and doesn't involve any political process. But that is my understanding from this point from the council.
Councilor Knudsen.
I would just like to say that I really agree with, or my recollection is exactly what Deborah said, is that when we, first set up the audit committee, it was clearly 3 people, and I remember we all made suggestions. I think that was why I was asked those earlier questions today, is that we all made suggestions, and it wasn't like there were that many people knocking down the doors to serve on this important committee, but that we would just have one liaison counselor. And again, that overall, the whole audit, the new audit committee bit was to be very independent, really, of administration and city council and really even city clerk. I mean, it's very much an independent body to be work without us.
If I could, I know that, it's an independent in terms of that audit function, but it clearly is only authorized through the function of the council by charter. So it is an extension of you, just like the legislative audit in some ways is an extension of the legislature. But I think because because you guys work day to day and you're not like in peer for 2 months out of the year, there was an extra precaution, I think, in terms of having the audit committee work with those audits.
Rich, I see you stepped up to the mic.
Deborah, you have it exactly correct. It was by ordinance, and I believe it's 120-05, but don't quote me on that. And the other thing is that Brad is, if I want to say I have an official boss, Brad would be my boss as the chair, and the chair always has to be one of those outside members, according to ordinance, which you obviously can change at any point that you would desire to do that. But.
If I could, just to follow up, Denise had pointed out, obviously all of the things that they do, the audit plan before it's even authorized, before the internal audit can move forward with that, it comes before the council for your review, and you can make changes to that as you see fit, and then send that back to the audit committee. So it comes from the audit committee's review onto the council, and it can't be executed without your review and your input, and then it goes back to them. So it is always a part of your function. It couldn't exist without the council's authorization through charter. But again, the audit committee tries to keep things independent and focused on internal audit function.
Councilor Knudsen.
And to go just a tiny step more, and again, I totally agree with what Deborah said on this, is that just a friendly reminder that just recently we were all asked again for 2009 if we had any particular area that we were interested in having submitting to the audit committee. So again, I totally agree with what Deborah just said, and I'm just going a tiny step further to say that we've even been asked very recently for recommendations on areas to be audited.
And in that regards, I don't believe for the 2009 audit program, I don't think we have any requests.
We were asked I was asked by the audit committee to ask also the city directors, and I did get one area from Mark Cotter, Public Works, and we put that in the 2009 proposed projects. And you'll be seeing that, I believe, on December 15th at the evening meeting. We'll present that to you for your consideration.
But we didn't have any from any council.
No, none from council. However, we always accept special projects if they're reviewed and approved by the audit committee. So.
Anything else on this subject? Mr.
Sorry,
Marcia.
Could you grab me what was the ordinance again that established that?
I'm going off of memory, but I think it was 120-05, but memory might be faulty, so it was an ordinance. So.
Anything else on this subject? Mr. Marsh, I just want to assure you, in spite of our clarification, that everybody here is very comfortable with your competence and want to thank you up front for your public service here. It's very much appreciated. Yes. That's okay. Next up, we have the Fiscal Committee. I believe it's Gerald.
Chairman, we will have a fiscal committee immediately following this meeting, and we will be hearing from Mike Cooper and Erica Beck about TIF information.
Very good. Any questions of Gerald on that subject? Very good. Thank you for that, Gerald. Next, we have Land Use Committee, and Kenny's not here, so I'm going to call on Mr. Staggers.
We are going to have a meeting after the informational here, and we're going to be talking about policy on rural subdivision roadways. So it sounds like a very interesting topic, and invite everybody to come.
I'm sure they'll be standing in line, Councilor Staggers. I saw that IRAB had passed that out. I think this is our first glimpse at it. So, Public Services Committee, I see Councilor Anderson is gone. Mr. Brown, can we call on you?
Well, I know we have homework from Deborah Owen. We're to read the proposed ethics ordinance and have that read and gone through by next week. The meeting will be after the informational next Monday. And I know that we had a number of other topics on our agenda, but I've not talked to Kenny to see which we're going to take up first. But the ethics ordinance is the priority right now.
Very good. Any questions of Mr. Brown on that? Seeing none, next item is number 8 is the City Council open discussion. Anybody care to bring something forward? Councilor Jameson.
I'd just like to clarify with the chair that Councilman Jameson is the chair of the Land Use Committee, just for future discussions.
We're halfway through the year, Mr. Jameson. If I haven't got it yet, I apologize.
Mr. Chair, I think we're going to have an even more interesting meeting.
I think tonight will be very interesting. So anything here on City Council open discussion? Councilor Bennigan.
Bob, one of the things that we've done in the past as a council is to have a strategic planning session and discuss some of our priorities on what the budget would look like for next year before the mayor asks the directors to bring all those pieces together, if you will, to make the puzzle fit. And I'm wondering if there's been any conversation with administration and with our own staff to when we might be planning that, or if we're planning that.
Well, I will say that earlier this year, we did have some talk about going out to Rapid City, but it turned into a 3-day thing, which sounded like a lot of fun, but I think people started looking at their schedules and realized it probably wasn't feasible for many of us. Councilor Knutson.
I think Gerald brings up a very good topic, and I think that we, just ourselves, I mean, when we're talking about our own goals for the city, again, I'm very interested in networking with other communities too, but I just mean, as far as his question was concerned, is I'd like to see like just a, good 2 to 3 hour session of just, nothing fancy, very basic, just sit, even sit around this table right over here. I mean, I'm very comfortable doing a hard-working session for 2 to 3 hours and work on these for 2009. And not make it anything so elaborate or expensive that we run into any other problems.
Councilor Brown.
I would prefer, too, that we just hold it in Sioux Falls, and whether at this site or another city facility, or I would prefer we just do it here and buckle down for a few hours.
I know twice before we've had a facilitator and all of that, but I think maybe Dee's idea sounds very good. Ms. Owen, that you have some comments.
I was going to say, we did talk about that back, it would have been on October 30th or somewhere in that week, and I didn't hear a lot back from council members. In fact, I only heard back from 2, and so who were positive about that, and so we didn't move that forward at that time. And perhaps it was the idea of meeting with Rapid. I think the broader scope would have had somebody come in and talk a little bit about performance measurement, because as we set forward our goals and objectives in terms of performance measurement, we need to kind of bring those really broad goals, which are somewhat easy for us to come to a consensus on, if you will, but then bring that down. What does that mean in terms of public safety? Is it the plowing of the streets? I mean, and then prioritize that. And I had wanted to bring in somebody who had some experience with that program and helping guide the council, and I'd like to move forward with it. If you want to work on that, I will. So it'd be great.
Councilor Knutson.
Yeah, I still feel very confident that our chair and our vice chair would be very, very able to put the last 2 or 3 years of goals in front of us and go around the table and figure out what our 3 top goals are, and then if we get 5 votes on a goal, we add it, make it a goal, and just get this done.
Well, very good. Pat, what do you say that we get together with Deborah soon and put something together and let the council look at it? Very good. Very good. Anything else on that matter? All right. Councilor Knutson.
Regarding one of our items on our agenda tonight, and it's regarding the rezoning at Sanford. is I wanted to indicate to all of you that I had had an email, which I forwarded to the rest of you this afternoon. It was kind of later this afternoon. I'm not sure you've seen it yet, from a lady named Sarah Alexander, whom I do not know. And it was this lady that had called me some time ago, and I tried to share many of her concerns with you yet that same day. And she will be here this evening to visit with us. And then I also had a call from a lady who lives in that area. Actually, it's someone who plans to sell her house to Sanford, but she shared many of the same concerns of Sarah Alexander. And this second call today asked me if, in fact, Sanford would be able to just, like if you buy a house here and then you buy a house down there, that you could just use eminent domain and take over the rest of the block. And I said that I didn't think so, and that is nothing I'd ever heard was being discussed. And again, I'm just throwing this out so that these rumors can be handled appropriately.
Yes, I also had fielded 6 phone calls, and there's another one waiting on my message machine that I thought I'd catch in between this here. And there's some concern in the neighborhood about the process which this took place, and some folks feel like there has not been a lot of information forthcoming about it. There's a few other issues, and we're going to hear about them tonight. So that was why I was telling you, when Councilor Stagger said we're going to have an interesting meeting tonight, that was what I meant. I think we're going to hear from some folks that have some questions. I'd also like this group to know in the general public that the Islamic Center of Sioux Falls has done a groundbreaking a couple of weeks ago, and the mayor was there, I was there, Kenny was there, and Councilor Jameson, did you go to that as well? Okay, well, there was a few of us there, and they're going to put up a structure over by Axtell Park, and we met with quite a few of the Islamic Center community, and they're off to a good start. So we wish them well, and I'd like to thank them for the kind letter and the kind words that they sent to me. So, is there anything else for the greater good? Very good. Then we're going to move on to number 9, the presentations. And the first one that we have is the sanitary landfill groundwater monitoring with Mark Cotter. We'll also have Dave McElroy, Tim Kenyon, a consultant with Leggett, Brashears, and Graham of Sioux Falls. I guess they're going to, are they going to speak, Mark, or just in attendance? Mark shook his head yes. So, thank you. Well, Mark, go ahead anytime here.
Give it a chance to regen here. Good afternoon, City Council. I'm Mark Cotter, the Director of Public Works. With me tonight, as Councilor Litz had said, was Dave McElroy. He's the Landfill Division Manager, and if Dave can acknowledge. Bob Capel, he's our Environmental Division Manager. And then our two consultants, which is Tim Kenyon and Melissa Karstens, both from LBG, and they're our groundwater consultants on this project. Tonight we want to brief you on a situation that we're managing at the landfill, but first I'll provide some context to the landfill. The landfill opened in 1979, and the current footprint of the landfill is 710 acres. When the landfill opened back in the late 70s, it was common practice when you excavate the cell, and we were fortunate that we have in place good dense clay to use as the cell liners, that this compacted clay acts as the barrier between the solid waste that's buried and the outside environment. In addition to, once you excavate and establish that barrier, you also, it's common practice to install a system of monitoring wells very close to that barrier that are tested at least twice a year, that really provide the first line of defense if there's any migration of leachate through the clay liner. Leachate is the liquid that's commonly that is in a landfill. That's mostly water, but it's also it comes in naturally with the waste. It also is naturally produced as the waste degrades, and then also as rain precipitation enters from the top of the landfill. Those three components move through and percolate through the landfill, and as they move through, they start to pick up contaminants as the waste degrades. Our detection monitoring has indicated that a migration of contaminants from the leachate has occurred in the southeast corner of the landfill, and the presentation tonight by LBG will provide more detail on the assessment and corrective actions that we're taking to manage this situation to reduce and eliminate the impact to the environment and or the public. The contaminants of concern are naturally degrading over time and as they move, and are all contained on city landfill property. At this time, there is no human health risk with this situation. The South Dakota DNR has a requirement that we inform the public of the results of our assessment and corrective measures that we're taking to manage the situation. And in advance of that public meeting, which we're anticipating is next week, we wanted to brief you on the situation. So with that, we've got a presentation that we'll have Tim Kenyon with LBG take you through.
Thank you, Mark, and good afternoon. My name is Tim Kenyon. I'm one of the principal hydrogeologists with the firm of Leggett, Brashears, and Graham. Like Mark said, the landfill, you can see on your first slide there, it was started to be built in the 1970s, and it started up in the northeast corner. And actually, when they did this landfill, the city was under some pressure at the time, and they kind of installed the landfill. It really wasn't engineered at the time. It was kind of constructed as they went, because the train of garbage trucks didn't stop. They had to have a place to put their loads. You can also see in our expansion area there, it's being prepared for waste also, to receive waste, and some of it already has, and it'll be prepared and start probably next year. Like Mark talked about, we have monitor wells around the perimeter of the landfill, and some of those are fairly close to the landfill, as they should be, to provide early warning for contaminant releases and for when things start to move in the groundwater. In the mid-1990s, we started seeing contaminants show up, volatile organic compounds, in monitor well 43OX down in the southeast corner of the site. This is well there with a circle around it. Like I said, we first found those in 1995, and our two contaminants of concern are 1,1-dichloroethane and cis-1,2-dichloroethylene, two volatile organic compounds. Based on the detections in monitor well 43OX and a little later in monitor well 13R, we installed a couple more wells, 44 and 45. We wanted to see how far it had gone, and if it had gone, essentially the road between those two, the southern road perimeter of the landfill. We wanted to see how far it had gone. In 2004 and 2005, these compounds started showing up in those two wells, so we knew it was migrating. Based on those indications, we installed a couple more wells even further south, 52 and 53. Those wells are currently clean. They were clean to start with and are currently clean. So that tells us something about how far they've gone. And you can also notice there's an approximate property line. So they're a ways, we know the contaminants are a ways from the property lines. At the request of the DENR to determine how far southeast these things may have gone, we installed an additional well on your screen there, monitor well 56OX. That well was clean and started out clean and has remained clean. So we know it doesn't go that far. So based on that information, we can draw a line that tells us where this stuff is and where it isn't. And it looks like it's gone just a little bit past those wells 44 and 45. It hasn't got all the way to 52 and 53, and nor has it got all the way to 56. And we can draw the line fairly close to those wells because of the concentrations of those contaminants that are in those wells. It tells us something about what's going on. So how did it get there? This landfill is installed in very low permeability clay. Water does not run through it at all, hardly at all. Very, very low permeability. It's very tight stuff. So when it rains on the landfill and when water comes in with the waste, when it snows on it, this water is contained within the landfill. And one of the things we thought was going on is the water is building up in the landfill. It's a bathtub that's filling up. And we wanted to know how full that bathtub was to see if that bathtub of leachate is causing it to start migrating in places where it shouldn't. So in the early 90s, mid-90s, we put a whole bunch of wells in out at the landfill, drilled them about 100 feet down through the waste to measure where the fluid levels are at in the landfill. And what we found was that indeed, just as we thought, the fluid had accumulated in the landfill, and in fact it accumulated to the point where the fluid level inside the landfill was above the ground surface adjacent to the landfill, the natural ground surface. And certainly the fluid in the landfill was above the water table outside of the landfill. And so that told us there's this push, this driving force that's pushing this leachate outside the landfill boundaries. One thing to note, as you see on this slide, the water table is about, the leachate is about 30 feet above the adjacent land surface, adjacent water table. There is an aquifer present here. It's the Wall Lake Aquifer. In fact, several years ago, the city looked at it for a possible water supply, and I did that study. And it turned out there probably wasn't enough water there to make it worthwhile. But that's about 150 feet deep here. And that's the really only aquifer that has the potential to be impacted. But because it's that deep, and it's also because it's a confined aquifer, those things combine together that this is not a threat to that aquifer. So just kind of take that off the plate. To address the leachate issues, and this was done proactively in advance of any requirement of the state to do so, the landfill installed a leachate extraction system that also coincidentally extracts methane from the landfill. Methane is a gas, and it's generated by the rotting garbage. They put in a series of wells, 19 wells, in phase one of this system, and we started in the southeast corner because that was where the impacts were the most prominent, where we actually saw things moving outside the landfill. That is currently underway. It's working. There are several other phases that are going to be implemented. Phase two of the system, 23 more wells, and that's operational as well. There are 2 more phases yet to be done. Phase 3, which will probably be operational at the end of next year, and Phase 4, which is currently in engineering and planning. It will be a follow-on to Phase 3. So probably by about 2010, the entire landfill will be under the influence of a leachate extraction system and a methane extraction system. Now, you might ask the question, why wasn't this done before the garbage was put in? There's a federal law that came in, it was called Subtitle D. And Subtitle D said a lot of things you have to do to landfills. This landfill was constructed prior to that Subtitle D. So based on the practices at the time, leachate systems just weren't installed. And in fact, the process of installing a leachate and the engineering art of that time really wouldn't have been a very good leachate system anyway, installed with what we knew about those kind of systems back in the 70s and early 80s. So it wasn't something that somebody missed, it just was the practice at the time. The goal of this system is to lower that leachate head within the landfill to the point where water wants to run into the landfill instead of run away from the landfill. That's the whole goal. It's also to remove some of that methane head from the landfill. There's 2 ways these contaminants can get outside the landfill. One is by transport with the groundwater, and the other way is by transport with the landfill gas. Both of those things have a characteristic signature in the groundwater. And what we're seeing here is probably a combination of the both of them. So the removal of the leachate will remove the hydraulic driving force. The removal of the methane pressure within the landfill will remove the gas driving force. So it's attacking it from two avenues. To date, approximately 3 million gallons of leachate has been removed from the landfill. And that leachate is going 2 places. It goes to a pond where it evaporates, a lined, engineered pond, and it also goes to the wastewater treatment plant. And a slide you don't have in your package, let's see, we won't restart. Let's restart later. A slide you don't have in your package but is on your screen, also the landfill gas is being removed by the system. It's going to Poet, which they have an ethanol plant down by Chancellor. It's being piped down there to be used as an energy source. On December 9th, we'll have a meeting as required by the law to inform the public of what's going on. The principal thrust of that meeting is to inform the landowners that may own property upon which these contaminants have migrated. And this one's easy because the city owns all the property. It has not migrated off of any city property. But we will hold this public meeting as required by law. December 9th at the Keene Center, 7 o'clock. So that brings us to what we've concluded from all of this stuff. Number one, this portion of the landfill was installed and operated in accordance with the customary practices and the law at the time. The city has been proactive in advance of any regulatory requirement to do any of this. The first regulatory requirement that really hit was kind of to be here and to do this public meeting. Almost all of the other provisions of the law that applies to this have been done proactively in advance of the requirement to do so. The chemicals that we find in the groundwater, that 1,1-dichloroethane and cis-1,2-dichloroethylene, are very common. And they probably got there from residential garbage. They come from tetrachloroethylene, which is a degreaser, and trichloroethylene, which used to be a propellant in spray cans. That stuff degrades for the contaminants that we have today. So it probably got there, it's in every landfill. It's everywhere. The plume of these things doesn't appear to be expanding. It appears to be static. And in fact, there is some evidence that it may be contracting, and the system may be having some positive influence already. Ongoing analysis will be performed to see how our system's doing and see how it's having an effect. We're complying with the DENR requirements for corrective action, the corrective action being the leachate extraction and methane extraction systems, and ongoing monitoring that they're asking for. There is no impact to any drinking water supplies. There are no human health impacts. There are no impacts to the environment. It's this low permeability clay that the landfill's surrounded with, which is the good deal. It's the thing that caused the problem because it allowed the bathtub to fill up. But that's better than just having it migrate away. So that's a positive thing. Landfill and leachate gas are being removed. The degradation of these contaminants is occurring. We have very strong evidence, geochemical evidence, that that's happening. And finally, and most importantly, I guess, there's nothing else really you could do. The concentrations of the contaminants that we see, I do a lot of groundwater remediation, cleanups of groundwater. And the kind of concentrations we're seeing are a reasonable endpoint for remediation. They're already so low in the single-digit part per billion range. So there's really nothing else that could be done beyond what's being done. So everything that can be done is being done. And I have any questions?
Councilor Costello.
You said that there 3 million gallons have been extracted already, and two ways to get rid of it: goes to a pond and evaporates. And
correct.
what was the other?
It goes to the wastewater treatment plant.
Treatment plant. Okay. And then in the past, some people have advocated not using the clay liners that we have in our landfill. I would assume that we would have this problem, the leachate would be spreading out throughout the land in that area if we did not have the clay liners. Is that likely?
Are you talking about a constructed clay liner?
Right.
This may actually have overwhelmed actually constructed clay liner as well.
Right. My question is, if we didn't even put constructed clay liners in, we would have a lot more of this type of problem, wouldn't we?
Probably not. The clay there is very, very good, except when you impose this really unnatural circumstance on it. The concentrations we're talking about are so low that it's very difficult, really almost for any kind of liner to contain them.
Okay.
Especially under these conditions, that leachate, buildup of leachate within the landfill. The new landfill that's being built, the expansion area, it's got the leachate collection system in the bottom of it, so the leachate never gets more than a few inches deep in that landfill. So that's the solution to that issue.
Okay.
Councilor Knudsen.
I just wanted to just say for the listening public, when all of you use DNR, it's probably just good to remind people that we're talking about Department of Natural Resources, state government. I'm just saying we're just government people. We sometimes talk in acronyms. But and then you said the meeting is next Tuesday night, December 8th at 7 p.m. at Keene Community Center. Is that what?
Yes, ma'am. I think that's actually December 9th.
Okay, I was just reading this off the slide. I just was emphasizing that for public purposes. And then my only question was this: is there anything more we can do as far as enhancing the flaring system, or whatever you call it, the flare system that's in place as far as selling the methane gas? Is there anything more we can do with HOAT on that?
Not really. Everything that can be done and should be done is being done. You can only extract so much methane. The garbage has to generate it.
Okay, thank you.
Councilor Staggers.
Yes, you mentioned that the clay out there is working very well, but we're building new cells, and we are also putting man-made liners in the bottom of those cells. Is it really necessary for us to do that?
Well, one of the reasons to put the man-made liners in it is the federal law says that if you want to recirculate leachate, you want to take this out, put it back on top of the garbage, and let it filter down through the garbage and degrade the garbage, that you have to have a constructed liner under that. And the reason to do that recirculation is to make the garbage degrade more quickly. It becomes benign more quickly. It also produces more methane, which is beneficial.
So are we doing that in the new cells we're constructing? We're going to recirculate the leachate, or?
It's my understanding that eventually that will be done. Right now, there's not enough garbage in there to do that. So, is that the correct answer, Dave?
Right. Dave McElroy, Landfill Superintendent. As part of the permitting process we're going through with the Department of Environment and Natural Resources.
Yes, thank you.
We are looking at the possibility of doing that. And to give you an example, one of the things we will be proposing will be what's called an HDPE liner. And the permeability studies on that HDPE liner show that it's like the permeability is 1 times 10 to the minus 13th, whereas the existing clay is like ranges from 1 times 10 to the minus 8th, 1 times 10 to the minus 9th. So it is several orders of magnitude better than the existing clay, those HDPE man-made liners.
But those also cost $1 million, isn't it?
No, I can get you the exact, but
Okay.
it's, as far as if you look at the percentage of the whole cost of the cell, it's fairly insignificant.
Councilor Knudsen.
One other question I meant to ask earlier is that, so how often do we read how often do we read the wells, or I don't know how you say it from a scientific standpoint, so that we know where we are with any contamination?
Twice a year.
Pardon?
Semi-annually, twice a year.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Well,
Well,
I guess.
Councilor Staggers.
Yeah, in the past, we've been told that we're putting those man-made liners in, of course, to prevent possible contamination, just an extra precaution. Is that the real reason we're doing that, or is it really because we do want to recirculate that leachate?
There are several reasons, and all of those that you mentioned. Yep, we are looking at the possibility of recirculating leachate, which does cause the garbage to break down quicker, makes it more benign faster. We are able to capture a lot more airspace and extend the life of the landfill. By doing so, the waste will settle a lot quicker.
Okay.
We are not permitted to do that yet, though. We will be working with the state to take that route.
The recirculate, okay. Do you know when we're going to do that, or get a permit, or?
Yeah, our next permit, we're actually in that permitting process right now, so we should probably find out within the next 6 months or so.
Okay, thank you.
And it would be several years before there's enough garbage there to allow that to really happen.
Okay.
Anything else? Very good. Gentlemen, thank you for your presentation. If somebody would have told me a few years ago that I'd find this topic fascinating, I wouldn't have believed you, but it certainly is. Next, we have Eugene Rowenhorst, who's our Director of Finance, and Eugene is going to give us our monthly financial update.
Gene Rowenhorst, Director of Finance for the City of Sioux Falls. The good news is I don't have a lot new to tell you. We are progressing along as far as our spending. The total budget is right now at 77% spent, and we've got 2 months to go, so that gives us plenty of room for the last 2 months. Of course, snow is going to be a big issue one way or another. If we have snow, it's going to be a negative, and if we don't, it's going to be a positive. And that's about $500,000 as a rule per snowfall, if you figure a 4 to 6 inch snowfall or something of that nature. So the revenue is coming along fine. In fact, we were planning, and we're looking at this point, that we will have revenue in excess of what we had in the plan. The sales tax, although it's lower, we do have offsetting factors in place. If you look at the revenue side of the city general fund right now, we're doing better in interest earned. That will not carry through to 2009, but this year, because of the way things are, way interest rates have gone, we've been able to pick up some capital gains essentially in the process. and we had some good higher yielding securities to carry us through '08. They're not going to be there during '09 when we roll them over. I don't know if you've been listening to Mr. Bernanke or not of the Federal Reserve. He's got Fed funds rate at 1%. They think he could, I heard his speech today. He says, notwithstanding that you might have room to drop it another 0.5%, that's probably not going to happen, and it's certainly not going to go to zero, because even if you go to the 0.5%, it's cheaper for the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac in particular. They can do better than a 0.5% somewhere else, and a 1% obviously wouldn't work. So that's not going to carry through to '09, but we did experience good returns in '08. So the revenue is coming in pretty much. We'll, like I say, we will have a budget excess in the revenue side, so we're doing very well there. One of the things that's going to be interesting to watch, I think you received the sales tax results for November. Did you get? We're up at 2.1% for the general fund and 2% increase for the CIP fund. So we're going in the right direction. It's going to be interesting to see whether we, in fact, have had a good Black Friday or not. The reports today sounded like, at least on a national basis, it was doing very well, but we don't know locally. I haven't heard anything locally of any substance as far as apparently there was a lot of people out at the mall on Friday, but I also heard that when the sales went off at about 1 o'clock, the parking lot thinned out a lot. So we shall see, but nonetheless, it's going in the right direction. The other thing on our revenue side, we had 4 liquor licenses that we were able to sell this year, and they were not part of the plan, so there's about $500,000 there, a little over $500,000. So the revenue side is looking good. We're working on the CIP as far as getting the projects underway, and it looks like there's going to be very little left over there as far as projects that will not at least have been started and will be carried through to into the '09 plan, and you'll see those in '09 when we do that. So in the other places, it's all very quiet. I really don't have much more to explain. Like I say, the good news is it's dull, and that's the way we want to keep it if we can. But we're looking good for year end. That we should be fine as far as balancing the budget. That we'll come out with revenues in excess of expenditures.
Questions of Director Rowenhorst. Councilor Staggers.
Yeah, Gene, on the revenue that we've gotten as of October 31st, we've gotten 69% of our revenue. So in November and December, then we're going to get approximately 15% more. Is that fair to say?
Well, we're just starting to get our property tax in. And that's
okay.
you're not seeing
So
it
that's
at the end of October.
okay.
Other questions of Gene? Councilor Benninga.
Gene, I know we've talked about this before, but could you reiterate why you think that the lodging and entertainment tax is so much higher than the sales tax?
I know I can't explain that. There is some economists would have to do some research. We just don't have the ability to analyze the data that way. One of the most interesting things we picked up from the Department of Revenue in Pierre, and in case the media is here, they should go check with the Department of Revenue, because this is coming to you secondhand from there. But about 6 months ago, people started spending more money in restaurants than they spent for their grocery bills in the city of Sioux Falls. Now, I don't know what's going on, but Mr. Costello should be doing good.
Not in my restaurants.
But there's interesting things that are going on. One of the things that's going to be interesting to see if it starts to turn around is with gasoline prices. If you recall, we had a chart, I think we showed it to you several months ago, where Sioux Falls, Rapid City, and Aberdeen were on top as far as growth rates. And about 6-7 months ago, that thing flipped completely. And Sioux Falls, Rapid City, and Aberdeen dropped to the bottom in growth rates, and places like Watertown and Mitchell and Yankton rose to the top. The only thing we can speculate is that people did not or were taking into account the cost of buying a product in Sioux Falls if they had to spend $4 a gallon for gas to get here. And it's going to be interesting now with gas back down around $1.75 somewhere in there, if that travel to Sioux Falls picks up again, and that chart flips around. So there's some interesting dynamics going on here. Unfortunately, like I say, we don't have the ability to really analyze the data, and I don't know that there's any good data out there to follow it.
Councilor Bennigan.
I think the other thing that you need to thank the department heads for is the fact that they're managing their departments and making sure that they're not overspending their budgeted forecast. And as I look through the financial report, it appears not only have we done a good job of managing the revenue and we haven't met the expectations, but we've also done a very good job of limiting our expenses, and I appreciate the extra effort that the department heads have done in making that happen.
Well, I would like to second that comment. Clearly, the department heads are taking a very proactive role in still delivering the services, a quality service at an effective price, and they're doing an excellent job of it, and they really have done an excellent job of managing their budgets and still achieving their goals. We've not had to cut back anywhere from what was planned, and that's good, and the departments are doing an excellent job of providing services and goods with their plan, and doing an excellent job of managing it.
Thank you.
Anything else of Director Rowenhorst? Gene, thank you for that presentation. We appreciate coming down here every month.
Mr. Chair, I guess I do have one quick question.
Councilor Staggers.
Next year, the city is planning to have 25 additional employees. Are we thinking about maybe reducing that, or this time, or?
We're working on a plan right now to deal with 09, and we're not in a position to really give you any numbers at this point, but we are working on it. We're re-looking at the 09 plan to see what we can do, and particularly with the insight into the sales tax. Otherwise, we are getting prepared to do things if necessary, but right now we don't anticipate changing much of anything on the 09 plan, but we do have contingencies that we're starting to build. We're discussing it with the department heads as far as what might be things that we would have the opportunity to do something different, and we're trying to isolate how much money we can come up with that way. But like I say, that's a contingency plan, and we will have some information for you January, February timeframe.
Councilor Costello.
Gene, when we get unanticipated revenue in, like the bank franchise or the higher interest or more interest income than what we were budgeted originally for, do we need to do a supplement ordinance to appropriate that money, or is that just automatically deemed appropriated?
No, because we have the appropriation in place, and as long as we don't exceed the appropriation, we don't need to do anything else. We can take that revenue in.
But I thought we were exceeding the appropriation from the standpoint of, and I'm just pulling numbers off my head, if we were anticipating $100 in interest and we got 110, do we need to appropriate that extra 10?
If we didn't have an appropriation for that 10%, yes, you would. But as long as our total appropriation is being met, we don't have to do that.
As long as the total of all cumulative, not just one particular area? Okay.
Do you mean by that if we were down and lower in another area that it would balance out in that regard?
Exactly. We can't exceed the total appropriation for the year, and that's what drives whether if we're getting revenue in, whether we need to do anything extra or not. If we want to spend more money than what's already in the appropriation, then we're going to have to come to you.
So whether it comes from sales tax or bank franchise fee or something else that is somewhat irrelevant?
It all ends up in the general fund.
Councilor Brown.
So help me understand Gene, the difference between that scenario and what item number 31 is tonight, where we have extra money coming in as a result of a donation, and we have to do a supplemental appropriation for that.
Technically, we don't need to do an appropriation for it, but we usually do appropriate those kinds of funds because they're for a designated purpose.
Okay.
Probably wouldn't have to. There's a lot of gray area in there, but as an abundance of caution, we just appropriate it and have it over with.
I'd like to say, I think with that appropriation also comes some recognition of the individual or organization that has made that gift to the city. Is anybody else? Councilor Knutson? Very good. Well, Gene, we'd like to thank you again. Councilor Costello?
I'm done with Gene, but I have another question.
Okay, very good. Gene, thank you for coming in. Councilor Costello?
Since we have the Director of Public Works in the room, and there's been some questions about street projects and that, I was wondering if you could give us a little update on any street projects that are still hanging out there. That I know it was nip and tuck there for a while. And
Mark Cotter with the Office of Public Works. It was nip and tuck. We really had probably two that are clearly were not finished for the year, but once we seen the schedule not being able to be made up, we started to set some baseline expectations, which is get all the sidewalk, all the concrete elements in, and get the bottom lifts of asphalt placed. There's temperature requirements that we have to manage to make sure that we have a pavement that gets installed and lasts its lifetime. And if we allow things, if we allow asphalt, like a top lift that is very thin, to go down in temperature, say at 20 degrees ambient, we can actually get it rolled and densified before it cools off. And that's so some of those expectations, we went back to the neighbors and said, our focus is to get the bottom lifts in, and we did. Western Heights being one of them, and we just sent a letter to all the Western Heights residents saying the last update, the last daily update was going to be posted to the website, and that not only sod, turf restoration, but also top lifts of asphalt would all be placed in the spring. There's another street project up by UPS, which is Northwestport. Same situation. We were not, but the temperature requirements, we're not able to get the top lift of asphalt in, and so we'll be coming back next year to do that. We had some other projects that we simply stopped the removals, so we were comfortable with how they were going to go through the winter, but it was a huge year in road construction, and a lot of work on the maintenance and expansion work got done, but all the schedules were reasonable, and all the schedules that we believe should have gotten done. And so there's contract provisions to address when contracts are not fulfilled, and so we'll be addressing those this fall.
so all the roads are open and have at least a bottom layer on, and will be drivable through the wintertime, and then it'll be finished in the spring.
Yes. And there are a couple of neighborhoods that just sometimes the cleanup operations really got pushed to the end, and so we've asked Galen and his street department to go out and do a final sweep of those areas because it's some of that equipment the contractors just don't have. And so, but really, we're shut down for all practical purposes right now.
Councilor Brown.
Mark, any idea how much contractors are facing in fines as a result of the work not getting done? And secondly, where does that money go?
Every project is different, and also the amount of the delayed charges is different by contract. And so there's a set schedule that if a contract ranges between X and X, the daily penalty is this. And so each contract is different. And then also to discuss where the dollars go, usually when a project gets longer, it takes more management of our consultant. And so there usually is not a net gain, but it actually just covers our the damages that are assessed, because if the work, say, should have been able to be accomplished in 60 days, and it's taking 120 days, but we still, with the amount of utility work, we need full-time inspection out there, we're still incurring more construction, observation, and staking costs, and so it just essentially addresses those additional costs that we receive. Okay.
Anything else? I'd like to make one comment that I had a neighborhood that was a little distressed over some of the untidiness at the end of the season, and I called Galen, and he got his crew out there and tidied it up really nice right away, and I got some nice calls from the neighborhood about that. So thank you, Galen. I appreciate it. Anything else of anybody? Very
Thank
good.
you.
Thanks, Mark. Anything else for the general good of the order? Okay, very good. Then we stand adjourned. I'd like to remind us